Okay. Well, this session, what is this session? Okay. I have a lot of sessions. I'm sorry, I get completely confused. Anyhow, this session is one where we're going to talk about enabling secure digital transformation. You know, as I mentioned in my earlier talk, digital transformation is a clear big thing. And security is a big issue with digital transformation. The people who want to do projects are frustrated because they're either being constrained by security people saying you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, or they're going and doing it, and then it's the security people who are frustrated. So it's a big issue today, and it's growing. And even for plants that say, oh, I'm going to be completely isolated, I don't think that's going to last real long, personally. So anyhow, we're going to do this session. I'm going to give a short presentation, hopefully short, and then we're going to have our panelists. We have 4 panelists for this session I'll introduce in a bit. And I gave each of them an opportunity to get up and talk about their perspective, who they are, the company a little bit, and their perspectives on digital transformation and security. And then we'll have a panel discussion. Hopefully we'll have about a half hour for this panel discussion. It won't be like the last session that runs on. So let me start with this picture here about digital transformation. You know, a few years ago, we started talking at ARC around industrial IoT and industrial Internet of Things. I mean, all these buzz terms, and I know digital transformation is a buzz term today. And lots of people mean different things by it. The point I want to make is that, you know, and a lot of it, let me just say this, was driven by this idea, well, now we can go and put these new cheap devices in plants, and we're going to collect all this data, send it up to the cloud, and use analytics. And not that that's a bad idea. It's just that it's changed very rapidly from that. And what we're seeing is, you know, and it's impacting every aspect of operations. But the kinds of things people are doing, indeed they're doing, putting in devices and getting more data. And it's not just from new devices, getting access to existing data stores and things like that, getting the data, taking it to the cloud and analyzing it. But they're doing tons of other things. And my definition, which I'm probably stepping on my own presentation guide and practice this, is that it's really just people taking advantage of technology to do things better. And a key thing is it's very hard to say what they're going to do with it. So if you look at the kind of things we see happening, this is really awkward here, but you know, we see things impacting like in operations. What we consider digital transformation is just taking advantage of technology and connectivity. And if you look in operations, you're seeing a lot of mobile devices today. Particularly, I find it in the discrete industries and things. A lot of iPads with augmented reality and digital twins and things like that. We're seeing robotics being deployed even more than it used to be. I mean, it's always been big in auto, but it's growing much more now. We're seeing things like additive manufacturing, and this is one of those things I mentioned in my first presentation about an unmanageable device. People are putting in these systems to do additive manufacturing. The person who's managing that is not you. Somebody else is managing that. So it's very hard to take care of those things. We're also seeing in operations a trend in some industries towards remote operation, to try for safety reasons as well as to be able to deal with distributed assets, you know, solar farms and things like that. And maintenance is an area where it's grown a lot, this whole idea of digital transformation. And, you know, a lot of that's been new sensors to get more data, to do predictive maintenance type of strategies. Again, but you're seeing mobile devices, you're seeing more of the digital twins. In engineering is an area that we don't often talk about here. I happen to come from the steel industry, and I used to build steel plants. We would sell plants, but I also was involved in the construction and implementation of them. And engineering is a very big issue, and today we're seeing it being used again. Sensors, additional sensors, more mobile devices to make things go smoother, much more integration of the supply chain for building plants. Again, and digital twins, I'm finding, digital twins, there's a lot of definitions. That's another cutesy term, a nice term, but everybody has a different meaning for what it means. But we're also seeing things like drones, more GIS systems integrated in, and supply chain in the sense of the suppliers who are building that facility, who are building the wind farm, the people who supply the equipment and things. We're also seeing it happening in health, safety, and environmental. And I think that's an area that needs it a lot, but people are being very creative there. You know, Can we use devices somehow to be able to track people going into unsafe areas? Can we help to understand the reasons for safety incidents better by finding out how things go? Can we maybe put in sensors to sense unsafe conditions and then warn the people who are walking around? We're also seeing it even in our own area of process automation. And you know, I have a slide coming up, and it's the OPAF, the Open Process Automation Framework. I think it's Framework Foundation. I keep OPAF, the ExxonMobil. But anyhow, and you know what that's doing is that's taking traditional type of industrial equipment and replacing it with microprocessors of all types. New platform, it's a different kind of an architecture for the systems themselves. It's integrated with the cloud and edge. It's built to do that. And then, like IT, for example, which again, I know our audience here is not, some are in IT, but it's often more towards the OT side. But in IT, you know, there's a big push today to move things to new compute platforms. There's a lot of IoT things being done there. A lot of stuff with development of apps and containers and edge devices is really being adopted very quickly there. So, and all of these things are getting intermixed in the plants. So those things are happening. We call all those things digital transformation. Now, the implications of that I see is, first of all, you know, every area of an industrial operation is going to be impacted by this. You may not think so, but I think I just showed you a pretty broad brush, and all of them are being impacted. And their traditional status quo way of doing business is going to be disrupted. Whether they like it or not, it's going to happen. And you know, it won't happen overnight. Some places, new places, it'll more aggressive companies, it'll happen faster. But everybody has to anticipate that. And the one thing I think, because I know what I would do if I were there, is I find, and I hear from people, you know, that managers are encouraging them to be creative. You know, it's the classic thing of, listen, you know, I can do this thing on my iPhone, why can't you do it out there? It's that, and it's a very logical point. So people are being encouraged to find creative ways to apply the technology. And when they do that, that technology they're doing is driving a lot of connectivity that wasn't there before. And it's all being driven to improve performance. And the key point I have that I think, and maybe you all disagree, and it's a good one for the panel, I think one of the key things, a fundamental, a foundational element of cybersecurity that I've seen over the years is if you tell me, you got to tell me the use case. I'll tell you how to protect it, but you got to give me the use case because then I'll make sure that you're covering all the bases. Now, if I don't give you the use case, how are you going to protect it? You have to change your thinking. You have to become more open about your thinking. A good example is things like with applications, like, you know, now with this introduction of containers and things like that. That's a new security problem. And one problem, I think, or one challenge that things is going to be challenging, is that somebody may have an app today that they say, now all of a sudden I'm moving it to the cloud. And tomorrow they may say, well, no, I'm going to move it to an iPad. And I'm going to connect to an edge gateway. But they don't know they're going to do that, so they can't anticipate it. And all of those things have different security challenges. So you have to somehow rethink cybersecurity and say, what can I do to build a cybersecurity program that's resilient to those changes? I'm not saying that's easy. I always tell people, my job as an analyst is just to tell you what the problem is, not to give you the answer. It's a nice job. Now, when I mentioned the change in the process automation platforms, this is the OPAF, whatever that stands for. But anyhow, the platform. But if you look at that picture on the left, you know, is the traditional architecture of an automation system. You know, the Purdue model type of leveled, structured kind of a system. And what we're seeing is not that whole thing isn't moving to the right, but the elements of that are shifting to a platform more to the right. And the key thing is one, you know, there's architecture, but the key thing is, to me, the one on the left, when we designed that and structured it, it was designed for for controllability, reliability, safety was the key criteria. And you used proprietary processors and things like that. And a big focus of the standards that emerged to protect that based on that use case was things like secure conduits. You know, if you look at ISA 99 or IEC 64, it's fundamental, a very good strategy. It's the right thing to do, but it kind of presumes that's the structure. And now all of a sudden you go to the right, and I'm not going to say those standards don't work there, but it's not so easy to say, how do I segment that? How do I provide the secure conduits? Now you've got to get more down. You have everything connected. You've kind of gone to a flat network, but you don't want a flat network. You want that kind of security. So on the right, you have that challenge. And the key thing with those systems, and I can be corrected, ExxonMobil, feel free, but you know, what I see there when you look at that is those systems are now being designed. What's real important is I think they reflect how important digital transformation is. Those systems are being designed for connectivity. It's not that they don't want to be reliable and safe, obviously, but they also are being designed for connectivity and embedded intelligence, more intelligence. That's a different criteria for design. And it's using more advanced type of processors and software. One of the goals I know when OPAF was launched was to make it updatable, because Exxon, I was always told, they're tired of having to make a major change every 20 years or be stuck with something for 20 years because they can't shut it down. They want something they can keep up to date. And you know, if you look at seamlessly integrated with the cloud and mobile devices and mobile apps and things like that, I don't know if they've anticipated all the stuff that maybe is coming today, but it's a start. It's designed with those kind of criteria, which is quite different. But it kind of reflects that people are seeing where industry is going. They have to go there. Now, what kind of challenges does this present for security teams? One thing I see is, you know, the business leaders, and I know I'll probably exaggerating the case here, but, you know, a lot of business leaders are kind of demanding free rein. They say, listen, we have to improve. So we want the freedom to be able to do what we want to do. We don't want to be constrained by your security rules to tell us what we can do. We want to have the freedom because we're trying to drive improvement. And we also want the ability to rapidly prototype things and stuff like that. The people trying to control it, the security teams, the ones I have spoken with, you know, they've tried to control this. So they'll first one thing, and it's very natural and I think rational things to do. They'll say, all right, you go ahead and come up with your use cases, but then you give it to us so we can review it. Now, when you look at the way the world's going today, that means you got to get it reviewed by the IT security team, the OT security team, probably somebody who's responsible for the cloud, maybe somebody who has other networks, maybe somebody who has mobile devices and all those kind of things. No one wants to take the time to do that. So what happens is that gets bypassed. The other thing is, the other strategy, and it's a rational strategy, is, all right, then we'll develop some standards that you have to give the suppliers to follow. Again, very good, sensible strategy. But what I hear happens a lot is you get into purchasing, and the purchasing company, you go to the company and say, this is the requirements, and they say, you know, we don't do it quite that way. You know, can't we get by this? It's going to cost a lot of money for us to do that. And, you know, you'll get a lot cheaper one if you can do it without that. All of a sudden, your standards aren't being followed. So controlling it is a challenge, trying to constrain what the people are doing. And I think that, and on top of that, those are the challenges for security teams. We also have the fact that these technology developments are already creating new security challenges. You know, whether it's the OPAF or something like that, we all see new devices being put in plants, demands coming for more interconnectivity, new platforms, more cloud apps, things like that. So we already have that challenge coming, and it's all being driven by this need to get more data, interconnect, and things like that. So that's kind of the challenges. So to me, what you need to do is kind of come up with a new cybersecurity strategy. You need to broaden your perspective. Just like the digital transformation is changing the status quo in how people do business processes, we need a status quo change to recognize that it's disrupting cybersecurity, and we have to deal with that. But so one thing I did is just sat down and says, well, you know, you got to have something to go by. You can't just throw out what you have or anything like that. You have to say, what is it I'm trying to do? So I think there's some common themes that need to be addressed by a strategy. And the first one is, I think you have to anticipate that new business processes are going to cross all the domains. The idea of saying I'm going to isolate OT from IT isn't going to work. because the app itself is going to have connections that go across all the things. Again, you can constrain it in different ways, but you have to start off by saying, I'm going to have to deal with cross-domain. I use the term domain for IT, OT, mobile, things like that. Cloud. There's going to be integration of data, and the data's got to come from lots of different sources. I've been telling people I was at a Rockwell automation fair, and I just saw some apps there. And I wasn't much in the cybersecurity discussions per se, but I walked around the floor and looked at that. And when I saw the applications that were there using augmented reality with machines, some were like predictive maintenance, but you know, it was presenting information through using augmented reality. There were other ones where it was operational things using augmented reality. They're very tied in with PTC, so a lot of the exhibits were around that. But when I looked at it, I realized here was this iPad that who knows if it's protected. You know, it's the classic mobile device problem. And it's probably connected by cellular to Wi-Fi somewhere. That device has apps in it that they're trying to connect to the cloud to get data. They're trying to connect to engineering systems to get digital twin models and things like that, and design information. They're trying to connect to the automation system, the OT systems, in order to get the real values. Also, they can display it there. And I don't think that strategies to say, well, you can't get to the OT real data, you're going to have to go through the cloud net. You know, nobody wants it. If you're trying to tune something, you can't have something where you get feedback every 5 seconds. You know, you need it to, as you turn, it adjusts. So we have to deal with that kind of level of interconnectivity. And to me, that kind of gets rid of a lot of perimeters. The whole idea of perimeters kind of starts to dissolve. I think maybe I just did that one there as well. Oh, no. Well, let me see if I can go back. I can go back. Another thing with respect to that is the kinds of devices that people are using. You know, again, a lot of our cybersecurity is designed for PCs and fixed things and servers. And okay, we understood that someone's going to have a mobile device. You know, BYOD was a big thing a few years ago. But now it's just exploding there too. All kinds of different PCs, handheld devices and things like that, mobile devices, smartphones, tablets are all being used. And now, not only do you have to realize that you have to connect that, but you have to worry about the security of that. Okay? This app development, I think I mentioned that a moment ago. But one thing we see is, and I think it's a big trend, is towards containers. Different kinds of ways of deploying apps. And a key point there is the same app, people in the future, and again, this is not something overnight, but you have to think about it. They want the ability to say, okay, right now this app is deployed in a server on site in the normal factory. I want to move that app to the cloud. Or now I'm going to take the same app, it's not the same code, but the same functionality, and I'm going to move it to the cloud. And then tomorrow they're going to say, no, I think because it's too slow, I'm going to put it down into an edge gateway. And so I'm going to run it as a container. So you have to kind of look at things from the perspective of the apps, where before a lot of our security, I've been a big proponent of it, you know, was more endpoint focused. When I said an endpoint to people, they thought I meant a PC or a PLC or some device that had functionality in it. Today, it's much more down to the app, because you don't know where the app's going to be, you don't know the environment the app is in. So it's got a security challenge to it. Then there's this issue of deploying of new equipment in sites that's got to be managed by third parties, be it the security as well as the functionality of it. And you know, there's a lot of remote devices, I mentioned that earlier, the remote control, and a lot more distribution of assets. Now, you know, we talk about manufacturing, the process, whether it's process, discrete, or hybrid, but we also talk about infrastructure systems. Today we're talking about smart cities. Smart cities, you see all these things being integrated together. So we have to have a strategy that can deal with that. So when you look at, this is just, I think hopefully this is my last slide, I think. If you look on the left there, that's been the traditional organization, I think, structure for IT, OT, and within there. You know, on the bottom you have the old style plants. Not old, I mean, they aren't old, they're existing, but it's the structure of an OT system, and you have many of them, you have many plants, and then they all feed up to some corporate IT system, and they tend to go, you know, one connection, one kind of a interface per plant and things like that. And in that world, the way we have dealt with cybersecurity is the stuff at the bottom OT takes care of. The stuff on the top, IT takes care of. You know, today we would throw the cloud in there and stuff like that, probably mobile things and stuff like that. But there were two separate domains. And what I'm seeing happening is, number one, that point connectivity type architecture is shifting to something that looks on the right. I've used terms like security or connectivity fabrics, and you know, I haven't picked the right term. You know, every supplier, if I pick one, another supplier will tell me, no, I don't like your term. You know, so suppliers are faster than me at picking terms, so I don't want to attach. But it's this issue where, and I don't, you know, they're all connecting. You don't know who's going to connect to whom, and you have to identify and deal with that. That's why I use the term like a connectivity fabric. And in that world, clearly, you have to have some kind of a strategy that anticipates connectivity, this open connectivity. So to me, the issue is managing security of endpoints, where endpoints are changing to different kind of devices and app level, and providing somehow dealing with this need for dynamic connectivity or fast connectivity of anything to anybody and any device. You know, this was a phrase that was around 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know, anything to any time. Was it 18? Somebody said something like that. Anyhow, I think that's becoming a reality today. So with that said, that was my presentation. Now we're going to have a panel here. We have 4 panelists. I'm going to give each of them some time to talk. A couple have slides, some don't have slides. You know, they just want to kind of give their views on it and maybe relate what I said in this issue to how they see the issue and how they might be affecting their company. And, whoa. But I kind of framed what I'm hoping to get out of this is my questions. I mean, our goal is to have the panel and just open it up for questions from the floor after you hear everybody on this topic. If I can stop this thing from going. Is it going automatically, Preet? Anyhow, if you can read fast, I'll keep trying to click it back. You know, I mean, I have questions like what's needed to protect systems, you know, from these digital transformation threats. What's needed today to protect existing systems? What's needed to deal with the future? I mean, I understand you can't do it right now, but what should companies be doing to kind of prepare for this? And, you know, and when I ask those questions for ARC's perspective, when we talk about what are you going to do, we're talking about people, processes, and technology. We're not just talking about another box. Boxes, people have plenty of boxes. It's the processes and the people are probably the bigger challenges. So I'm hoping that they'll be able to address that. But, you know, again, we're going to open the floor for questions. But now, let me introduce our panel. Everything's screwed up here.